Hey, I'm Sean Teis, and you're welcome back to Let's Talk About Fatherlessness. I'm excited to have my guest today, Andre Anderson, man. It's great to have you.
Hey, man, it's cool to be here, man. We out here partying.
Dude, I don't know. We've known each other for, I think maybe 4 years, something like that. We met each other at an event, Lead the Generation. We were both speaking at that event, and we just kind of connected there. We have different backgrounds, but similar stories. And so just go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're at right now, and then we'll dive into your story.
Oh man. So where I'm at, currently I'm in Pittsburgh. Grew up in Pittsburgh. Just moved back here after 24 years.
Right there,
So
man. Right there. Right there.
yeah, oh yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, we're
So
doing terrible this
believe
year,
like,
but hey,
yeah, hey, it happens.
yeah.
So
So sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, it happens. So yeah, but we're living in Pittsburgh. I run a virtual church called Barbecue Church, and I barbecue food all the time. I smoked pork chops last night. They were delicious. So
That's awesome. Awesome. Tell us more about Barbecue Church. So what brought you to that? I've seen it on Facebook, and I think it's a great concept. Tell us more about it.
the fast version is I started smoking food in 2020 whenever things got boring, and I started a Facebook group called Barbecue Assembly of God because I thought it was hilarious, and we quickly grew. And then people said, man, you should start a church. And I really felt the call of God to start Barbecue Church. I was going to just do videos of me smoking food. And I really felt like the Lord goes, no, you're a pastor. You're going to lead people to Jesus through barbecue. And so I've been doing all just sermons. I do virtual sermons every week, with the exception of Father's Day, which is hilarious that we're talking about it. But I don't do anything on Father's Day for a specific reason. And yeah, it's something that works. I mean, we're reaching about 1,000 people a month with the gospel through barbecue. So it's fun.
That's awesome.
But,
I love it. It's great how you're just being innovative and just trying to reach people maybe that don't go to church. Just that content. I think it's great. I think it's wonderful. And you're doing it in Pittsburgh, man. I love Pittsburgh. My son, I was talking. Well, I had Aaron Holt on before, and I told him my son just loves Pittsburgh. He's all about it. When I was a youth pastor in Florida, we would come up to Pennsylvania, visit family, and then we'd go vacation in Pittsburgh for a few days. And I think he just enjoyed going seeing Heinz Field and all that stuff. So that's great. And then his 13th birthday, we took him to a Steelers game as his big present for his 13th. We tried to make the 13th one a big one. So, I mean, we were up in the nosebleeds, but we got to experience it. And so since then, he's a hardcore Steelers guy, even though we're struggling a little bit. But hey, defense wins championships, right? So I kind of guess we can kind of ride on that. But I think it's great what you're doing, man. I think your ministry is awesome. The reason why I wanted to have you on was when we connected. I think it was at Lead the Generation. You shared some of your story with me. So would you kind of go back? Let's rewind back to your childhood. Tell us about the Andre, the little Andre, and tell us what how it all started, and tell us about your story of fatherlessness.
man, it's so funny. They hear the concept of little Andre. I'm like, like you just start. Me and my brother were just talking about like the way we grew up, and it's wild. And we're sitting here. I'm at 44 years old. Like, good night. Like, how did we survive? So my mom got pregnant with me at youth camp. So she was 13 years old, got pregnant with me, had me when she was 14. And my dad went to the Army. So my dad went to the Army whenever he graduated high school, went straight to the Army. My parents actually went to the same church. So we're Salvation Army Church in Homewood, out here in Pittsburgh. And so I knew both sides of my family. I knew them. I had a relationship with my dad, technically. We wrote letters and all that. I got a stepdad. I was about 4 years old. My mom remarried and had my little brother, Mike. My stepdad was not a very nice person to me, because I wasn't his biological son. So that was a whole ordeal. because you have a boy growing up in a home with a man that's not his father who doesn't like him. And all
Yeah.
I wanted was for him to actually like me, and show me the same love that he showed his own son.
Yeah.
But it was so it was difficult. It was a difficult time. Uh, let's see. I think sixth grade. Um, I mean, there was a time in the fifth grade the police came and it was a whole thing at the school. So they tried to take me away from my family because of the way that things were going back at my house. The way I would end up coming to school, they were like, "Your bruise is a little too bad."
Mm.
Things like that. I ended up making sure that that didn't happen because I wasn't leaving my mom. And yeah, so I grew up in this just different style of environment. My mom got her life together with the Lord in about the seventh grade. For me, uh, my stepdad actually got my mom prayed him out of the house. Just hilarious. Like she literally prayed and he just stopped coming home,
Mm.
started living somewhere else, and
Yeah.
kind of funny, hilarious. Um, and so I grew up in a way where, um, let's see, I think eighth grade, I started going to a school at Assembly God Church, and the Lord just started placing men in my life that started helping develop me in a healthy way. Because I didn't really see much healthy development. Um, it was no healthy guidance, no healthy leadership. It was just here and there. Um, but now, it moving through, like we made it. Uh, it was just it was just different. It was just different. But through all of it, for me, I just see where God placed men in my life to help me become who I needed to be, to help me not grow up weird, and completely deficient, as a lot of times we can, if not having that positive role model. My mom is remarried now, to an amazing dude, and calls me son. He's my dad. He's my guy. My dad moved back from the army, I want to say when I was in the seventh or eighth grade. I mean, lived probably 150 yards away from me, you know,
Wow.
like close. So, um, which caused a lot of stuff in the home with my stepdad to kind of calm down, because my dad was, one, he was in the army, two, he was crazy. So, uh, and so I got to see him. I got to hang out with him. Um, you know, um, then growing up, I mean, I got married, had kids, trying to be my own, be a father to my own children and be a great husband to my wife and do all that. My biological father actually passed away 6, 7 years ago. And I was there. I was living in Chicago at the time, drove into Pittsburgh because they told me he had 6 months or less. And I drove in from Chicago and he was gone in 6 days. So I was there with him. And, you know, but I mean, that whole thing is, I mean, it's honor your father, honor your father and mother. I was there. That was my guy. I took care of him. He took care of me, later in life. And the last thing my dad wrote, because he couldn't talk, he was trached. He had really bad cancer. I took up his voice box. And he just said, be better than me. He like, just be better than me.
Wow.
And
Wow. That's good.
and he said, like, just do that. He goes, I'm proud of you. Take care of your little brother. He has another son. Um, I told him I'd take care of him, and that's what I do. So, you know, so we just work on being better. So it's wild. Here's the program is in my Bible for his thing. And you'll notice it's the Steelers font.
Nice.
So yeah.
Wow.
So his whole
That's great.
yeah. So everybody was instructed to wear Steelers stuff to his funeral and
Yeah.
black and gold, because
Oh, wow.
that's how I buried him in his Penguins jersey, and
Nice.
we'll put terrible towels in the
Oh,
casket
wow.
before. Yeah.
true Pittsburghian, or what's the word? What do you guys call yourselves in Pittsburgh? I mean,
Pittsburgher, I guess. I don't know.
Pittsburgher, true Pittsburgher. Wow, that's
Yeah.
great. What way to go out in Pittsburgh? I grew up in Altoona, which is, we're not quite Pittsburgh, but we're kind of a little Pittsburgh. I guess you'd say we try to call ourselves, but we're not quite there.
Right.
But it's
Right.
great. Yeah. So
Close enough. I mean,
yeah. No, I love your story. I love how, you kind of get into the gritty of all the stuff that happened, and there's a lot that I want to unpack about that. The first thing I want to ask you is, before we go back and cover more of the childhood, how did you overcome? How, keep going with your story. How did you, you knew God wanted you to go into ministry, or how did you overcome that? Because a lot of people become statistics. They become a statistic. They end up in prison. They end up committing suicide. They end up becoming an addict. So how did you decide, I'm going to break through this and not going to become a statistic? I mean, was there ever a purposeful mindset about that, or was it just God just brought you through the whole thing? How did it happen for you?
um, I had praying grandmothers. Like that's it. I had praying grandmothers and who prayed nonstop. They prayed for all their kids. They knew what the situation was, and they prayed. And we, like, a lot of times we want to joke and say, like, well, I need more than prayer. Well, I mean, sure, in certain instances, but there's a lot of stuff that we can't control. And if you can get control of the spiritual aspect, things can begin to shift. And that's one thing that my grandmothers made sure happened for me, is that things shifted because they prayed it into existence, and they prayed it in the spirit to make sure that I was taken care of and make sure I was protected. That's one big thing. My mom, same thing. Once she got her life together, she prayed. And, she was she was always praying Psalm 91 over me. And, I knew at 7 years old, I was going to be a pastor. I just knew. And so that's just something that I hung on to, and I just ran towards. So, I lived in Homewood. I lived in Wilkinsburg. I lived in these areas where everything around me was crazy, but the Lord always protected me.
Yeah.
My mom always brings up, I had a pirate hat that had under the bill, I wrote, "No weapon formed against me will prosper." And I used to walk to church. We went to Covenant Church in Pittsburgh, and I could walk there from my house, but it's gang area. And I was not close to gang like at all. And, it was just something, like, I walked, I made it, there were no issues, there were no problems. It, a lot of prayer and a lot of focus, and just knowing who I was. If you don't know who you are, you'll get into anything. If you don't know your purpose, you can get into anything. But if you can connect somebody to their purpose, then everything shifts, everything changes. So you just start focus.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is the direction I'm going to go. If you're all willy-nilly about it, then, anything comes, but my mom was very adamant about me and my brother not being statistics, not being normal. We are two, I'm 44, my brother's 40. We are two Black men that grew up in the hood who can swim, because our moms made us swim. So when people be like, Black people can't swim, I mean, yes, I can. Like, I can swim. We eat everything, like, we can go anywhere and we can fit in. My brother is a high level businessman and business consultant who handles millions of dollars in transactions a year. Dude is insane. We were just raised to be different. And so we knew what our purpose was, and we just ran after our purpose. Just never sidestep. And so, like, I believe that that's what dads help with. Dads help you find your purpose. They help you find, like, this is what you're great at. And then they encourage you in it, encourage you to push forward. A great dad will do that. And so I just had a lot of men that rallied around me and helped me, like that. The Hot Wheels track that that when the car like it slows down, but then it hits that one spot and it has like the speed booster
Yeah.
and
Yep.
it'll propel the car on. That's what it was like for me. I always had somebody there to continue to propel me forward in my mission. So
Yeah.
you
Now
know,
speaking about
I
now
mean,
talking about that, going a little further with that. First of all, with your mom, what did she do? What's some of the things she did? So for the single moms listening to this, what are some of the things that she did for you as a child, a teenager, to help propel you in that right direction?
um, my mom, one, she always prayed over us um, out loud, physically. So my mom would do drive-by prayers. If she was praying, you got prayed for. If you were in the house, you got prayed for. I had friends that were Jehovah Witnesses that were in my house playing Super Nintendo that got prayed for with oil on their head. Like, and we'd be sitting there playing Super Nintendo. She does not care what was happening in that house. If you were in the house, you were getting oil put on.
Hmm.
Didn't matter. Didn't matter what you believed. Nothing mattered. So she would come through. She'd be praying, and she would put her hands on you and pray over you, and then keep walking. And I never stopped. Like I just kept doing what I was doing because I was used to it. And my friends
Yeah.
were just, wait, is this what's happening? Yeah, it's happening. Just chill. So that's one. My mom was very adamant about that and displaying that publicly. This is what we do. This is who we are. And my mom was also a safe place for me.
Yeah.
So when I screwed up, I would always tell my mom everything. Like I would go out, like I'd do random stuff. Like I'd come home and be like, hey, mom, hey, here's what I was doing. It was nothing. It wasn't like, oh, I was out here smoking crack, nothing like that. But, I was like, yo, I was out here, I made out with this girl. She's like, you shouldn't be kissing them girls. I'm like, well, listen, hey, you know, and she was like, all right, well, you need to stop. You need to calm down. Like it was never anger. It was always just like, okay, well, here we go, you know, and she always just, you know, she was safe. She was always safe. She never yelled. She never hit me. She never flew off the handle. It was always, I'm your safe place. I always will be. And me and my mom still have a great relationship. Like,
Mm.
great. I talked to her. I drove home. It was a 6-hour drive home from New York the other day. And I talked to her for 2.5, like, yeah, about 2 hours. Like,
Wow.
I mean, we're close. She lives in Swissvale, man. I mean, she's
Yeah.
right there. So, but yeah,
That's really good. That's
that's,
great. I love that. So one of the things that really spoke to me while you were saying that was she just kind of brought God into your home and kept made your home. What's we teach single moms in our curriculum. One of the things is we tell them like make God the center of your home and help your kids understand that God will fill the role of their dad. And so that sounds like that's what she did for you was helped you, with that through that whole process. Now going back to you said there was men invested in you. Talk more about that for the mentors out there, even for the churches out there that are listening to this, how they can get the men involved with the fatherless boys and teenagers.
I mean, I had guys that just understood. They saw what I was going through. They saw where I was at, and they were like, "Hey, I got you."
Mm.
Like, because when I was younger, I mean, I got kicked out of a school. So, like, I got kicked out of Greater Works, and then I had to go to Bethel Christian Academy, which was a blessing because that connected me with Bethel Assembly of God, blah, 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 blah. Hence, I'm an Assembly of God pastor now. Anyway, um, but, these guys would see, and they're like, oh, you see how I'm acting out. You see the situations that I have. And then they hear the story, and then they go, oh. So then they began to help. Then they would begin to maneuver through what I was into, and they would get to the root of the issue,
Yeah.
and the root of, a lot of it was trust. I had major trust issues and major rebellion because I didn't trust you. I don't trust anything. I don't, you know, it's time, and it takes me really looking at myself and going, this is who I am. Um, but I had teacher, Mr. Money. He was that. I had a teacher, uh, or a principal was Keith Holt, who is the brother of John Holt. John Holt is the father of Aaron Holt. So that's my whole connection with that whole family, is through that. And they were just men that helped. Mr. Holt had a son, Kevin, that I hung out with all the time. I would stay at their house. They would make me lunch. They would let me stay over so that I could go to youth group, and I wouldn't have to worry about it. Like, I wouldn't have to go home, all the way on the east side of town. Like, they would just take care of me. After high school, I had a guy, Glenn Whitfield, and his wife, they would come and pick me up. They would come from Millvale to Homewood to pick me up and then take me out to Allison Park for church, and then past their house to drop me off and come back. So it was just people who saw where I was and saw what I lacked and saw what I needed, and then made sure that I was taken care of. It was like the Lord just spoke to them and let them know this is what needs to happen. And so just looking and seeing, it can be the smallest thing. Like Glenn and Robin, it was a ride. They just took me places and helped me experience some crazy stuff. And we had a blast. We had fun. They're still some of my closest friends because they were always there. So it's just see the people and then give these kids opportunity, opportunity that they wouldn't normally have, baseball games, teach them how to swim, like there was stuff like that. It's big, teach them how to go to a nice restaurant and eat properly.
Yeah.
Teach them how to treat a woman right. Like make it it has to be a point. I learned all that stuff from these men.
That's great.
It wasn't, I didn't learn that in the home. I learned it from random men who decided to teach me, like, this is how you treat a woman. There's a guy, Bill Stern. I dated his daughter, and dude could have threw me through a wall. He could have. He was a pipe fitter. Dude, big old boy. And he's like, nah, this is the way you're going to treat women. It was his daughter.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, he could have killed me. And he was just like, nah, this is how you're going to treat a woman. I learned that from him. I learned that from other men. So we just have to look at these people and understand that, if you don't have training, you don't have training. So what do you do if you're untrained? Are we going to put a bunch of people out on the field who are untrained and let them play football? I mean, with the Pittsburgh Steelers, probably right now, yes, that's what we are doing. But, like, if they weren't trained, then, oh my gosh, it's time to train them. So how do we take these students and do that? How do we take these kids and do that? Covenant did a program called Brothers Keeper, where they would do that for young people. They would do that for the fatherless. So, can we do that? Can we teach these kids how to cook? Can we teach them how to barbecue, stuff like that?
Now, were you part of that program, or was that after you were out from Covenant?
I wasn't a part of it. I wasn't a part of it because I didn't like anybody. Like, I was like, man, I don't want to do that, because I didn't like the people that were in it. I was like, they're not my friends. So
yours wasn't a formal program. It was just a bunch of people that cared for you, and they were there for you. I mean, that you knew that they were available. And I could completely understand. I had the same type of thing. I have people that even either today or tomorrow, I'm having my vehicle worked on by one of my mentors from high school. And so he's still there. You know what I mean? I totally understand. And it wasn't like he was hey, will you be my mentor? And, that can work if you want to do it that way. But it was just an organic thing where this guy was a youth, leader. He helped in the youth group. He worked a regular job, but he was just helping out, and I knew he was available and he cared about me, and I would hang out at his house, and they just were an encouragement. You know what I'm saying? We weren't, and you can do this. I mean, we have our devotionals and stuff you can work through, Fatherless journey, things like that. But for me, with this guy, it was just going to his house and knowing that I had a place that I could hang out, and he would talk to me and he would tell me about the Bible, and and it was just an encouragement. You know what I'm saying? It didn't have to be a program, right? And programs
Yeah.
work; they do work, but it doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be some form. I think we
Mhm.
overcomplicate this issue of fatherlessness, right? I mean, what do you think about that? Where we make it has to be, well, we have to have this whole program, and we have, well, you can do that. I mean, I'm not against this. I have friends that run great programs, but yours was organic, just like mine. And I think the devil uses it where people get like, well, how can I be a mentor? I can't get involved in this. Or how can our church start something like that? Just get the men involved with the kids that need some help, right? You agree with that?
Mhm. Yeah, sometimes it's just you got to give somebody a hug every week.
Yeah.
Like that's what happened with me and a guy. There was a dude living an alternative lifestyle and walking out of alternative lifestyle at church, and I knew every time I saw him I had to give him a hug every time, and I gave him a hug all the time. And when I left that church, he goes, bro, you helped me develop who I am because you weren't afraid to hug me, and you weren't afraid to show me like godly man love,
Yeah.
you know, like
Wow.
that didn't want anything from me and wasn't scared of me. And it's just like, how can you just hug on somebody and let them know you love them?
Yeah.
You know, like just like that's all sometimes that's all they need. Just somebody say, hey man, hey, just need you to know I love you, man. I love you. I care about you. That goes a long way. So
Yeah. I liked what you
it's
said.
not rock.
You were telling people on Facebook you love them, and then your wife, she got onto your phone and made sure.
Yeah. Yeah. She was
What you
looking at
said
her
on Facebook.
phone. Yeah. I'm like, hey, listen, if I tell you I love you, don't freak out. Like I'm in a good place. I'm not tapping
Yeah.
out. I'm just saying. And she's like, who you telling you love them? Like,
Yeah, you got to be careful with
or
that, right?
I'm like, you
You got
need
to
to
be
calm
careful.
down. You need to
I
calm
thought that
down.
was pretty funny.
Like, and then I posted the other post and her friend screenshot it and sent it to her. It was like, look what your husband said now. I'm like, why you always snitching? Our friends are snitches, man.
I love how you keep it light,
So,
man. I like how you keep it light. You
that's
just
how,
kind of, that's what I enjoy about following you on Facebook is you just kind of keep things light and fun, and you have a good humor about it, right? I mean, I enjoy that. Now, I want to touch two things before we have to close here. First thing is your stepdad. How did you said there had been some abuse and things like that. How did you come to forgiveness with him? Because I know a lot of times bitterness would just eat us alive. And I'm sure there was some bitterness there for you. How did you forgive him?
I just did. It's one of those things of like, he was a messed up dude and he was abused. And I just choose not to carry that with me because I didn't want to be like him. And I didn't want to have like a curse on my life that would cause me to follow the same path that he did and be that with my children. So
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not going to let this harbor, like, I'm not going to harbor that in my heart. I'm not going to keep that with me. I can just go ahead and forgive him and move on. He's still friends with my mom.
Hmm.
Like, they're still friends. He lives in my grandmama's house, my mom's house. Like,
Wow.
she passed away. My stepdad lives in the house my mom owns.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
they're still friends. They still talk. Like, it's not a big deal,
Yeah.
because forgiveness is amazing and forgiveness is needed. And so we just learned, and my mom modeled that. So we just don't harbor that. We cannot allow our hearts to hold on to that because it's toxic and it ruins our current relationships.
Yeah. But it's
So,
okay to break off relationships with people. Like your mom was like, I got to get this guy out of my life when you guys were kids because he wasn't there.
oh yeah,
So it's good to break
right.
them off, but it's okay to forgive later. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to have them living in your house, right? But you forgive
Yeah.
them and
Oh
let
yeah,
it
yeah.
go.
No, no, he doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's like it's just the way that situation worked
Yeah,
out.
exactly. Yeah,
Like,
that's good,
I
man.
mean, yeah, he and I don't talk. Like, it's not like we talk on the phone, but I've seen him in the street, and I'm like, "What's up?" Like, "What's up,
Yeah.
Mike?" He's like, "What's up?" Like, it's
Nice.
not a big deal. Plus, I'm also 6'3", like 240. So I mean, try something now. I
That's
need to
awesome.
keep no more.
Well, the last thing I want to ask you about is your dad. Now, how did that go? He came back from the military. How'd that go for you with restoration? I mean, did you guys ever have a really close relationship, or, I know you touched on it a little bit when he passed away. He told you to do better than him and stuff like that. But were you ever close when you were a teenager, or would that not really ever happen? I mean, what happened there?
Well, yeah, we wrote letters when he was in Germany. We talked when he was in Georgia. When he came back, I went down and saw him all the time because his house was right there. So I could run down and see him. I could be at his house in, 2-minute run. So I did that all the time. And we'd hang out. My aunt, his sister, owned a daycare center that, she took care of me in the summer. So I was always with my dad for that because he was the cook for that. So we hung out. We had fun. Like, he was my man. And, when I got married, he knew. When I got pregnant, he was one of, well, not me, but he was one of the first people that knew, it was a whole thing. And so he was a major part of my life. When his brother died and when his stepdad died, people were leaning on him and he felt like it was too much. And he called me crying. He's like, Andre, I need help, and so we just had that relationship. And he was like, you're one of the most stable dudes I know. So help me through this. Help talk me through it. The Lord gave me wisdom for that. And so, I mean, that's my man.
Yeah. Was there ever a time where
he's like, that's my son and him,
That's good.
So
did he ever bring you up, or did he kind of just let it go, like not being around when you were little and stuff like that? Or just kind of, because you wrote letters, it wasn't like an awkward. No. Okay. That's good.
No,
that's
never
good.
Awkward. The only thing he wishes that he goes, I wish I would have killed your stepdad. And that's real. Like, that's just honest. He goes, I should have killed him. I promised my brother I wouldn't kill him. He promised. They were on the phone and he said, my Uncle Joey said, promise you won't shoot him. He goes, I promise I won't shoot him. And then he got off the phone and my Uncle Rocky made Uncle Joey call him back and say, promise you won't do anything. And my dad was mad because he was like, okay, I can't shoot him, but I can stab him. So, and so he was mad that he made that promise. But, I told him, hey, you're here. You got to see my family grow. You got to see us. We're part of your lives. I'm okay. So
that's good. Good. Well, we have to wrap up. We're about to get cut off here. Tell us where we can find you. Tell us where everybody listening can find your ministry and find you.
JesusLovesBarbecue.com is the easiest way to find me. Or barbecue church, but you got to spell it out. BARBECUE church.com. That's where I am. That's where I live. Andre Stephen Anderson, Stephen with a V on Facebook, where I post all my crazy stuff. And man, we out here partying.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, thanks for being on with us today. We really appreciate it. Hey, thanks for checking out this episode of Let's Talk About Fatherlessness. We want to now challenge you to take the next step by either starting a single mom community group in your church or with your ministry, or by joining our network of God is My Dad churches and ministries. Isn't it a great experience to be able to start a single mom community group?
Yeah, and it's just, if you talk to single moms, a lot of times what they'll tell you is the one thing they're lacking is that community, just a group that they can go in and they know there's no judgment. Everyone may not have the same situation. Everyone doesn't know what they're going through, but they can go in and they know there's no judgment. And it takes that kind of that restriction and that wall down for them so that they can share and then that they can grow in Christ.
And our single mom community groups are a wonderful ministry. And if your church can start one, we'd love to have you. We can help you get set up. We have the curriculum and all the resources you need. If you can't start one, we'd love to have you start by joining our network of churches and ministries, our God is My Dad network of churches and ministries, where you can get your church or your ministry on our map, and people can find you and find your ministry in your church so that they can get plugged into your church or ministry locally. So check that out. You can find all these resources at lifefactors.org. We have books, we have all kinds of content on there at lifefactors.org. Check it out today.